What's up, Hoboken? Woo! Thank you so much for coming out today. My name is Nora Martinez Di Benedetto. I'm the vice chair of the Hoboken Democratic Committee, and I'd like to be the first to welcome you all to our beautiful home on the Hudson on this perfect fall day. Woo! Now I want to get right to the point. The stakes have never been higher. Our freedom is in jeopardy. I'm fired up and ready to go for Election Day, and I'm going to tell you why. I was in college when I found myself in the lobby of a pretty swanky New England hotel. The television was tuned to the Democratic National Convention, and Senator Menendez was speaking. I stopped to listen for a minute when the most astonishing thing happened. Senator Menendez broke into Spanish. And it wasn't just buenos dias. He spoke in his native tongue for a good part of the speech on national television in front of hundreds of thousands of people during prime time. Now that might not sound like a big deal now, but at that time it was huge. And as a Latina who grew up in Hudson County, I thought that my senator was speaking directly to me, telling me that I mattered, that my people are important. Yes, yes. Now, so many years later, I know that not only was Senator Menendez talking to me, but that he was also listening. He was listening to the Americans when we said that we will not stand idly by while our nation is corrupted by a president who is the antithesis of everything that we hold dear as Americans. Thank you, yes. He was listening to Latinos when we said that we want a leader who will fight for sensible immigration reform instead of putting children in cages. Come on. Senator Menendez was listening to women who demand that Washington must stand up for women's rights, whether it's access to community health care or fighting for expanded family leave. Am I right, ladies? And Hudson County, Senator Menendez is listening to you. As the former mayor of Union City, the senator knows full well that when Republicans cut funding for rail tunnels and infrastructure projects, it has a direct impact on our local economy. I know. Senator Menendez will make sure that our federal tax dollars come right back here to help us with our overcrowded roads and buses. Now, friends, I'm going to tell you something. We can't sit this one out. Look what happened last time. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends, tell your kids, tell your parents. Vote, vote, vote. When I say keep it, you say blue. Keep it? Blue. Keep it? Blue. Keep it? Blue. Woo! All right. Thank you so much. And now let's give it up for the chair of the Hoboken Democratic Committee, Phil Cohen. Woo!
Good afternoon. As Nora said, I'm the proud chair of the Hoboken Democratic Committee. Our 80-strong Hoboken Democratic Committee people are fired up for Tuesday to return Bob Menendez to the Senate. We know Bob Menendez. Bob Menendez has lived here in Hoboken as our neighbor. He's represented Hoboken since 1988, when he served as our state assemblyman, then in the state Senate, then as a congressman, and since 2006 as our U.S. Senator. Bob Menendez has always stood up for New Jersey, and now he is standing up to Trump. When Trump tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act and the protections for people with pre-existing conditions, Bob Menendez said no to Trump. When the president wanted to drill for oil off the coast of New Jersey and roll back our environmental protections, Bob Menendez said no to Trump. When the president pushed an unfit nominee for the Supreme Court and rushed Brett Kavanaugh's hearing through the Senate, Bob Menendez said no to Trump and voted against Kavanaugh. When the president pushed a tax bill that exploded the deficit, giving huge tax breaks to the wealthy and corporations while capping our state and local tax deductions at $10,000, Bob Menendez said no to Trump and voted against the tax bill. And now, Trump and the GOP threaten to cut Medicare and Social Security to address the deficit that they exploded. Programs that are there to protect us. And we know that Bob Menendez will say no to Trump and protect Social Security and Medicare. There's only one way to stop Trump's daily assault on our nation, our nation's values, and the rule of law in this country, and that is by restoring our co-equal branches of government. We know that a Republican-controlled Congress and a Republican-stacked judiciary will not stand up to Trump. We need to re-elect the man who has fought for us and our values to restore balance to our chaotic federal government. Hoboken and Hudson County, let's vote yes for Bob Menendez. He has fought for us. Now we need to be there for him. Tell your friends and your neighbors we need everyone to turn out on Tuesday for Bob Menendez. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Phil. Thanks for reminding us that Senator Menendez used to live in Hoboken. You know, Senator, I kind of miss running into you at Soul Cycle. You want to go grab a smoothie later? Yeah? Okay, all right, great. Our next speaker is shattering glass ceilings all over Hudson County, becoming the first ever woman to be elected chair of the HCDO. Let's give it up for Amy DeGeese. Woo!
Hello, Hoboken. I am loving this energy in this crowd right now. Thank you so much for having me. The Hoboken Democratic Organization, thank you so much for doing this and putting this together. You know, Hoboken in Hudson County is one of the most energized and engaged Democratic communities. You should be so proud of yourselves for that. And on top of being extremely engaged and feeling empowered in this process, you seem to continuously be on the forefront of a lot of progressive issues that are being debated nationwide. They're happening in our own community, in our own backyard. They're being led by great elected officials who utilize their community in a positive way to make sure that there's good governance all the time. So you guys are in a great position right now, and that's why I'm confident on Tuesday, Hoboken is going to be sending some shattering numbers to the polls to vote and re-elect our great senator. And what that will do for you here in Hoboken is keep you in the driver's seat of progressive initiatives for decades to come. When they see the numbers and the energy that are going to come out of Hudson County and the great city of Hoboken, we will be unchallenged for decades. We will be able to put forth those progressive initiatives that we want to see happen nationwide because we protect the people of our communities in our backyard as well as the rest of the state and the rest of the country by putting in great leaders like Senator Bob Menendez. Remember that on Tuesday. All of you here are probably already planning on voting. Thank you. But you have to make sure everyone else is too. You have to make sure we have very little time left. You have to make sure that everyone is standing up for Hoboken, is standing up for Hudson County, and is standing up for our great Senator Bob Menendez. Our voter turnout can decide this election. It is up to us to remain empowered and to send back not a rubber stamp for this man who calls himself a president, but a fighter, a man who makes sure that Hudson County and the state of New Jersey is protected from all of the shenanigans that are going on in Washington. We need to send back and keep fighters in there who fight for us and fight for this country. Thank you again for all being here. Let's keep this energy up. Let's keep ourselves going. And let's have a good day on Tuesday.
Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Now, next, I'd like to introduce someone who, in his very first act as the newly elected mayor of Hoboken, our next speaker signed an executive order designating Hoboken as a fair and welcoming city. Yes. Thank you. This local legislation was in direct response to the vitriol coming from the White House. Hate has no home in Hoboken. That's right. I am so proud to introduce to you a lifelong civil rights activist, proud Democrat, New Jersey's own Mayor Ravi Bhalla.
Are you guys fired up? Are you guys as fired up as I am to get Senator Menendez elected on November 6th? Ladies and gentlemen, the stakes have never been higher than this Tuesday, November 6th. A lot of people say things about Bob Menendez. I want you to know the Bob Menendez that I know. He's not a man who hit a triple and thought he was, well, you know that saying about hitting a triple and think you're landing on third base. All right? The guy worked for everything he's ever had. He's earned everything he's ever had. He ran for school board as a 20-year-old and has earned his keep. Nothing was given to Senator Menendez. He is the true embodiment of the American dream. And I think we need to keep that in mind when we contrast the opponent that he's running against, who's essentially trying to buy a Senate seat and influence the outcome of policy in Washington. This is also an important election because it's an election where we need to send a message that we are going to stand up to Donald Trump. Do you think that his opponent will stand up to Trump? His opponent will be a rubber stamp for Donald Trump. Bob Menendez has resisted Donald Trump's policies tooth and nail with every breath in his body, 1,000%, and we need to make sure that doesn't stop. Again, the stakes could not be higher for this county, for this state, and for this country. Now, this election truly is, and I say this at the 48th hour, this election truly is a persuasion election. There are still people who are scratching their heads, who are thinking about actually not voting. I know we got all you in the crowd here. What I need you to do is talk to your friends. If anyone has any doubts, tell them that a vote for anyone else other than Bob Menendez is a vote for Donald Trump. A vote. If you do not vote, that is a sign of support for Donald Trump. The only choice we have as Americans to preserve our values, to reclaim our country, is to vote for Bob Menendez on November 6th. Because as Menendez said, what's happening in Washington is a complete polarization. We're becoming the divided states of America when we are the United States of America. And we must always keep that in mind. Thank you. I want to introduce next as our speaker somebody who I've known for almost 20 years. We first met when he was a councilman thinking about running for mayor. He came in the backseat of my car and gave me a tour of Newark, and eventually became mayor and is now our U.S. Senator. He's been a dear friend ever since. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Cory Booker.
All right, Hoboken! All right! I cannot tell you, I have been traveling around this country from campaigning for Stacey Abrams. Thank you very much, Mayor. From campaigning from Stacey Abrams down in Georgia to going out to North Dakota where they're trying to strip away voting rights from Native Americans, out at Standing Rock campaigning for Heidi Heitkamp. I've gone all over this nation in one of the most important elections, let me strike that, the most important midterm election of my life. But I tell you what, there's no place like home. It is good to be here in Jersey, in one of the most historic cities in all of our country. I brag to other states that Hoboken had the first brewery in the United States of America. Look around you right now. I stand here and I feel full of spirit because when I look at this crowd whose ancestral DNA traces back to just about every single continent on the planet, I look at this crowd and I say, this is what America looks like. We are a people that are part of this great experiment. This nation was not founded because we all looked alike, prayed alike. We're not a monarchy or a theocracy coming from the same family tree. We broke with the course of human events to say that this nation would be different. We would found ourselves in ideals that were even bigger than the men, the geniuses that put them down in paper. And we knew if this country was going to make it, we had to have an extraordinary commitment to one another, those ideals of shared sacrifice, commitment to one another, common cause, had to be at the center of our nation. And indeed, our founders who wrote that Declaration of Independence, a document that, with its genius exhibited within, still had residue of the bigotry of the times, Native Americans called savages, women not mentioned at all, African Americans fractions of human beings, but they knew that the ideals would be so inspiring that every generation would try hard, sacrifice, and work to make this a more perfect union. But that commitment to one another our founders got right. They knew that this nation had to be great because of our unity. They literally said at the end of the Declaration of Independence, hey, if this is going to work, if we're going to make it as a nation, we must mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. The story of America, the story of our greatness, isn't about what's happened in Washington, D.C. It's been about people like the ones that are surrounding me right now saying that in times of moral challenge, we as citizens of this country will answer the call. We're going to make multiracial, multi-religious, multi-ethnic coalitions to drive this nation forward. And you all know this story. Don't fall into the trap of the great man theory of American history. The truth of this country is that groups like this in towns like ours stood up and in moral moments fought for the change. You all know that. It wasn't a bunch of men in Washington that suddenly got together. It wasn't a bunch of men in Washington that suddenly got together and said, you know what? It's time for those women to have their voting rights. No. It was activism from communities like ours, people coming together, multiracial, multi-ethnic groups that said, we're going to fight for women's suffrage. You all know it wasn't Strom Thurmond coming to the Senate floor one day and saying, you know what, it's about time those Negro people have some rights. No. It was people from all different backgrounds in America that stood up and fought for justice. It was people willing to struggle for it and sacrifice for it. Ordinary Americans making an extraordinary cause for this country, extraordinary sacrifices. People like Goodman and Cheney and Schwerner, black and white, Christian and Jewish, who literally gave the ultimate sacrifice for this country and our voting rights. That's the story of America. Don't let anybody tell you that we haven't seen wretched times, that we haven't seen bigotry and hate in our history, but that's never defined us. We are not a nation that's been defined by the hatred that was evident, the bigotry that was evident, the sexism that was evident. We are a nation that defined ourselves by how we came together and overcame those times. We are a nation that has defined ourselves by the constant struggle to make that more perfect union. We have exalted those leaders amongst us, from community activists to tenant leaders, to union and labor leaders, to civil rights activists who established this country as one that will always be a nation that elevates leaders who know that you cannot lead the people if you don't love the people. And now, we're at a time where we need to remind people what patriotism is. Patriotism is not a song or a slogan. It is an action and a commitment. We need to remind people what patriotism is. It's love of country, and you cannot love your country unless you love your fellow countrymen and women. We need to remind people that patriotism isn't dividing one American against another. Patriotism is always about putting more united back in the United States of America. Patriotism is about putting more indivisible back into this nation, one nation under God. And so this is a moral moment in the country. It's where we see leaders trying to divide us, leaders trying to pit us against us, leaders appealing to our fears and our anxieties, not our hopes and our dreams and our common aspirations. And now, more than ever, we need American citizens to answer the call of country again. Because this is not a left or right moment. This is a right or wrong moment. It is wrong to take away people's health care. It is wrong to close our borders to people escaping injustice. It is wrong to separate families from children. It is wrong that we live in a nation where you're treated better by our criminal justice system if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. It is wrong to live in a nation where you do not get equal pay for equal work. It is wrong that the very institution that's led to the greatest expansion of the middle class our country has ever seen, public schools, are now under attack. It is wrong. It is wrong that in our country we have people who work a full-time job and still live below the poverty line. It is wrong. And so when things are wrong, we got to be right. But I tell you what, we live in a democracy. And being right doesn't mean that democracy is a spectator sport where you just sit home at night watching Rachel and getting all upset, getting caught in a state of sedentary agitation when you're disturbed about what's going on in the world, but you don't take responsibility to get up and do something about it. This is a democracy. We're not a spectator sport. We are a full participation organization. We got to get on the field. We can't pray for change. Faith without works is dead. We can't hope for change. Hope without work is a delusion. We have got to be that change. And so I want to ask everybody here now, at this moral moment in the country, the best thing we can do is not simply say, be the change we want to see in the world. We got to vote the change we want to see in the world. You all have given me one of the greatest privileges of my life to be your United States Senator. But when I got down there was a partner that I had. He was my senior senator. I got down there a year after Hurricane Sandy. I was mayor, and people in Newark died as a result of that storm. We saw the devastation here in Hoboken, and I got down there. And before I could even rest my arm from putting it up to swear my oath, my senior senator, Bob Menendez, put his arm around me and said, let's go to work. I've watched this man. I've stood next to him before devastated houses down at the shore and say, Cory, we're not going to rest until people in our state get the justice they deserve. I've stood with him, with people grieving over the loss of their family members because of the opioid addiction. He said, Cory, we cannot rest until we get the resources to deal with this crisis. I've watched him with love in his eyes, seeing the beauty of our children who happen to have autism, and said, Cory, we cannot rest until we elevate the dignity of every one of our children in this state. I have seen that he doesn't just talk with those words. he brings more money home for people who've had their homes devastated. He has authored legislation that has brought more money to our state to help people struggling with addictions. And he authored the autism laws that have helped us to make sure that all of our children get justice. These aren't headlines that national media like. They're not the bash and crash and the smear and fear that dominate our headlines. But this man in the quiet cause of our state, he is there every single day fighting for the people of New Jersey, delivering on hope, delivering on dreams, making our state better every single day. And I'm going to tell you right now, if I'm in a trench fighting, if the cause of our country is at stake, if the battle is fraught, if there's hate being preached from the highest offices in the land, there's one guy I want in the trench next to me, fighting on the front lines of our country. And that partner of mine, that brother, that senior senator, my mentor, I want him by my side, and that's Bob Menendez. And we are New Jersey. We cannot allow this state to send someone to Washington who's going to fall into lockstep with a president who is attacking our state. This president attacked our state with a tax law that raised our property taxes and took away our deductions for state and local taxes. This president attacked our state by coming after our health care, by coming after people with pre-existing conditions. We cannot allow that happen. This president has attacked our state by putting people on the highest court in our land who will fight against our rights and our protections. We are under attack. And I'm not saying this in a way that's irresponsible. We cannot allow this to become a nation where someone with their hate contorts us so much to make us hate them. This must be a time in our country where we have a revival of civic grace, where even those that hate us, we love them no matter what. Even those that discourage us, we still love them. Because at the end of the day, we cannot dislike someone because of their political party. That the best way to destroy an enemy is to reach a hand of friendship. This is a time that in New Jersey, I've been so happy to go across this state and see Republicans and Democrats come up to me and saying, right is right and wrong is wrong, and what the President of the United States is doing to our state is wrong. And if you believe that, the way to answer his hate is not by hating the president. The way to answer his hate is with our love. The way to answer darkness is with our light. The way to answer the things we don't like is about voting for the people that we do like. And so now, here we are again, at another moral moment in our country. We who drank deeply from wells of freedom and liberty that we did not dig. We who owe a debt to our ancestors that we cannot pay back, but we must pay forward. We now have a choice that in this moral moment in America, we may not have been called to storm beaches in Normandy. We may not have been called to do freedom rides or to march or to sit in, but this is our moral moment. And I'm asking everybody right now, when the cause of our country is in the balance, when the challenges are at our doorstep, when New Jerseyans are getting hurt because of ineffective policies and policies directed to hurt our communities, what are we going to do? Will we answer the call? Will we go out and vote? Will we return Bob Menendez to the United States Senate? Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you the current senator from the state of New Jersey and the next senator from the state of New Jersey, my friend, my partner, my brother, Bob Menendez.
Hoboken, you ready for a big victory? Hoboken, place of birth, baseball, Frank Sinatra, and a victory for the country next Tuesday. Now, I have one privilege as the senior senator. Normally, I get to speak first. And now you know why I like to invoke that privilege whenever I can. You just heard from someone who has been a tremendous partner with me in the United States Senate since he arrived. fighting for justice and an economy that works for all and for equality of opportunity. Someone who worked very hard to reach out to the other side and bring them together in common cause, as he did successfully on several occasions, but someone who is also willing to stand alone for principle, as he did at the Senate Judiciary Committee during the Kavanaugh hearings, and someone who could very well be the next president of the United States. I'm thrilled to be back in Hoboken once again. I want to thank the mayor for bringing us all together and for his commitment to the people of this great city each and every day and moving it forward. He definitely has my cell number because he uses it quite often, I can tell you. When they wanted to put the ferry, shipyard repair thing here, he called me up and he said, we can't have this. When the light rail's not working well, he tells me we can't have this. When he wants money for police and fire, we need this. He is a tremendous mayor. Ravi Bhalla is a tremendous mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. I know he works with some of the members of the council who are here. I appreciate them being here as well. Let me thank our chairman and our vice chair lady. I do speak a little Spanish. Sí, hablamos un poquito de español, así que no hay problema. Así que But thank you for your advocacy for our party, but more importantly for the cause, the issues, the things that we believe in to make a difference in people's lives. So thank you very much for your volunteerism, for your commitment. I appreciate our county chairwoman. You know, Hudson County has never, ever had a woman as the chair of the Democratic Party, and she is doing a fantastic job. Amy DeReese. Appreciate the freeholder, the assemblywoman, and all of those who are here joining us, and I appreciate all of you. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day, and I'm so thrilled you're here. Look, let me talk about this election. Every election in our democracy is incredibly important, undoubtedly. But this election has never mattered more. The stakes have never been higher. The consequences have never been more significant. I'm not talking about my election alone to the Senate or Albio Series to the United States House of Representatives. I'm talking about all of these congressional elections across our country for the House, for a third of the Senate. We have no check and balances on this administration and its worst proclivities. We have a president who seeks to divide us by who we are, where we came from, what we look like, the color of our skin, or who we love. We have a president who is the ultimate divider-in-chief versus a uniter-in-chief. He obviously forgot what this country is called, the United States of America, and he does not do that each and every day in his life. Against that, he has a direct hit on New Jersey. You know, I'm proud of being one of the 3 authors of the Affordable Care Act. 1 million New Jerseyans got health care as a result of it. 3.8 million New Jerseyans cannot be discriminated against because of a pre-existing condition. Our kids can stay on the insurance until the age of 26 as they make their own way in life. There's no more lifetime cap so that if you get a serious illness, you're one illness away from bankruptcy. That's gone. Women cannot be discriminated against anymore and charged twice as much as their male counterpart simply because they're a woman. Pregnancy is no longer a pre-existing condition. We think it's a good condition that brings people life into our country. All of that we achieved is under assault by an administration that is trying to have the law declared unconstitutional as we speak in a federal court. All of those protections, all of that coverage is ultimately at risk. We have an administration that has a direct hit on us. They gave $2 trillion, not million, not billion, $2 trillion with a T of our collective tax monies. To whom? To the wealthiest 0.1%, to the largest corporations who didn't hire more workers or improve their working conditions or their pensions or their futures, but bought the stock and drove up the price of the stock dramatically. And then that $2 trillion, which is unpaid for, meaning the next generation of Americans is going to have to pay for it unless we change it back. What did they do? You think after $2 trillion, the last thing you have to do is come take a hit on states like New Jersey by capping our state and local property tax. The single biggest asset most New Jerseyans have is their home. 1.8 million New Jerseyans are going to get hit with an $8,000 hit because of the Trump tax bill. And then in addition to that, last week, the Senate Majority Leader, the Republican leader of the Senate, said, well, debt is rising. Well, yeah, you just gave $2 trillion away to the wealthiest people in the country. Debt is rising. And we have to do something about that. So what does he say we have to do? He says, well, we're going to have to go after entitlements. What are those? Medicare, the health care of our seniors. Medicaid, the health care of the disabled and the indigent and those who need a nursing home. Social Security. Why do we call them entitlements? Because you paid into them. You're entitled to it. We shouldn't have to lose our entitlements in order to go ahead to give $2 trillion to the wealthiest people and cap our state and local property tax deduction and get an $8,000 hit. We need to change that around. Last time someone wanted to drill off the coast of New Jersey, you know, for me, as I visit the shore area, I believe it is a birthright to every New Jerseyan to be able to go down to a pristine ocean and enjoy the Jersey Shore with their family. There was this effort for drilling before. We beat the drill. Now this administration is back after we got President Obama to give us a 5-year moratorium. We convinced him, give us a 5-year moratorium, take significant swaths of the Atlantic off deep canyon drilling, which he did under the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act. And now this administration is back with the Department of Interior trying to drill off of our shore. No way in hell will we allow them to drill off the shore of New Jersey, but this is on the ballot. Women's reproductive rights. I'm proud of my 2,600% record with Planned Parenthood, the national organization with women, and so many others to uphold women's rights. This administration constantly is drawing us in a time and place that none of us want to turn to. We saw it with Judge Gorsuch, which I voted against when he was nominated. And then we saw it even worse with Judge Kavanaugh when he was nominated. I voted against Kavanaugh when he was up for the D.C. Court of Appeals before Cory came. And I'm so glad I did, because every decision he made in the D.C. Court of Appeals, the second highest court in the land, was against voting rights. He sided with states which consistently put obstacles to citizens to vote, mostly people of color. He sided with those entities that were violating the civil rights of individuals, never sided with an individual who ultimately claimed their civil rights was violated. He said Roe versus Wade was wrongfully decided. He says the President of the United States cannot be pursued while they are in office. Well, I guess he forgot about Richard Nixon and Bill Clinton. This is the reason that Trump picked him. Because on everything we care about, he will roll back the clock to a time and place none of us want to see. That's why we fought so hard. But we cannot allow one more Supreme Court justice. I pray for Ruth Bader Ginsburg every day. We cannot allow one more Supreme Court justice to be nominated and get through the Senate by this president, or we'll lose that court for over a generation. I grew up poor in a tenement in Union City. I am the beneficiary of public education. I appreciate that it was a teacher who turned my life around. I still remember her to this day, Gail Harper. I couldn't do what I'm doing right now. I was terrified. I was the biggest introvert you could find. It was a teacher who stayed after school every day until she broke that shell and got me to do what I am now doing. That's why when the president sends us budgets that eliminates Title II, Title IV, which is the federal assistance to education to districts like Hoboken, we have fought, put it back, and I appreciate all the educators who are here, who are constantly working to make a better life for each and every one of our children. That's under assault in this as well. I appreciate the mothers who have stood up and said, why in our nation can there not be reasonable gun safety measures so that we don't have to see the slaughter of our families? I've always aspired for a good grade, but I am proud of my lifetime F from the NRA because I do not believe that you need an assault weapon. I voted for the assault weapons ban when I was in the House of Representatives, and I am sponsoring its renewal again. We don't need assault weapons. That's not about hunting. That's not about protecting. That's about killing. We need to end the assault weapons. I'm the sponsor of the legislation to eliminate high-capacity magazines. Why do you need 50 or 100 rounds? That's about high-capacity killing. We need to end high-capacity magazines. And my God, you got to go through a check for a whole host of reasons, including your license. Why can't we have a universal background check that says you have to go through a check if you want to buy a gun, whether on the mouse of your computer or whether at a gun show or at a gun store, to make sure you don't have a criminal background, you don't have any mental illness, you weren't a domestic abuser, and by the way, you're not on the terrorist watch list. We can do better in America. These are the things I have fought for, but these are the things that are at risk, and so much more. There's no checks and balance on this administration. Now, my mother, when she was alive, used to say, if you can say something nice, say it. If not, be quiet. But, Mom, I'm going to violate it this time. My opponent is a greedy banker who came to a pharmaceutical company and took the one drug the company had. It's a drug for multiple myeloma. It's a life and death drug for those who have to take it. It's not a treatment drug. You take it for a period of time and then you get better. It's a life and death drug. He took that drug and he rose the price of it by 200% after taking control of the company. Not because he had to, but because he could for profit. And then, before he left the company last year, he raised it again. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And got another $100 million before he parachuted out with a golden parachute. Not because he had to, not because production costs more. By the way, that pill costs less than $1. He sells it for $600 a piece. While he was raising the cost of vital cancer drugs in the United States, he was lowering it in Russia, same drug, by 50%. Even the Trump administration, who he gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to elect, he was the state finance chair for Trump. He was a delegate at the Republican convention for Trump. Now he doesn't know who Trump is, but he gave him a lot of money. Even the Trump administration called out his company as the worst in the entire country for stopping generic drugs from coming to the marketplace, which are cheaper and ultimately equally as effective. Yet he was making a deal with a Russian drug company to do exactly that. This is a guy who was sued by the federal government and 22 states, including New Jersey, for Medicare fraud, for Medicaid fraud, for fraud against his own fellow veterans in the VA system. And for the most unconscionable thing I found in that suit, for not telling patients and doctors about potentially fatal side effects. And several people did die. Who does that? He settled the case for $280 million, over $250 million. I don't know, but I don't settle any case for $280 million unless I did something wrong. This is a guy who, when he was at Princeton, worked hard as the student president of the Tiger Eating Club to stop women from joining the eating clubs in Princeton. And that wasn't about socialization. That was about networking. It's about having relationships with people who are going to go on and be extraordinary, CEOs, presidents of companies, leaders in our nation, and in so many different walks of life. You want to have a relationship with them so as you go forward in life, this network is incredibly important to you. He fought tooth and nail to stop them. When the Supreme Court of New Jersey said that's unconstitutional, what did he do? He didn't accept it. Then, as the alumni president, as a grown man, married with kids, he took it upon himself to litigate the case in federal courts, all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, where he lost. And when he lost, he called the woman who was just looking for equality of opportunity, who led the case, Sally Frank from Bayonne, New Jersey. He called her a politically correct fascist. This is a guy who said that gay students at Princeton would never make it to the Tiger Eating Club. I'll tell you something, Mr. Eugen, you're not going to make it to the United States Senate. I can tell you that right now. So, it says a lot about somebody who's willing to prey upon the most vulnerable simply because you can, simply because of profit. What would you do if you had the power of a United States senator? Well, we're not going to let him find out what he would do. This is an election in which the one thing he did do is made hundreds of millions of dollars by gouging cancer patients. And unfortunately, he has spent nearly $40 million on television in the worst, most negative, salacious advertising I have ever seen in 40-plus years of public service. Declared false, not by me, by the New York Times, the Washington Post, 4 Pinocchios they gave him, CNN, USA Today, Star Ledger, false, lies, false. We have an opportunity to send a message that when you use the politics of personal destruction, we will reject that at the polls. We will reject the negative advertising. We want to see about hope and opportunity and what you stand for, because you think $40 million later, you tell us what you stand for. But you don't want to tell us what you stand for, because everything that he stands for is everything against what I've been fighting my whole life. You don't give hundreds of thousands of dollars to candidates and organizations like the Heritage Foundation who oppose everything you believe in. You don't oppress women and stop them from joining the Princeton eating clubs and take it to the Supreme Court of the United States and now tell me you're for women. You don't tell me you're a moderate Democrat when you constantly give monies to candidates who ultimately are endorsed and who vote for the NRA's agenda. And the list goes on and on. This is a defining moment for the nation. We have no checks and balances. They have the House of Representatives, they have the United States Senate. There is nothing to stop the president, and there's no profiles in courage, I can tell you and my colleagues. They won't stand up to him. So I don't know about you, but I want to change the course of events in the country. Whatever mistakes I've made, I've never been mistaken about who I fight for, where I came from, and what I'm doing. I'm fighting for you, for your hopes, for your dreams, for your aspirations. So I don't know about you, but when I want to move forward, I put my car into D for Democrat and I drive into the future. If I want to go backwards, I put my car into R for Republican, and boy, do I go backwards. We don't want to go backwards. We want to move forward. We have 2 days. 2 days for a check and balance. 2 days to change the Congress. 2 days to stop Trump. 2 days to take our country back. And with your help, that's exactly what we're going to do.